Assalamualaikum and good morning. I think we've just finished with our Varsity Kita song just now, and welcome to our webinar with Enhancing Clinical Teaching in the Digital Era. My name is Ainul Shahril. I'm one of the consultant surgeons, neurosurgeon in UKM. And like you said, we live in unprecedented times at the moment. Everything has been turned upside down. Everything is a challenge for our daily normal life and all that, especially in our healthcare. At the moment, the healthcare, our frontliners are doing a very great job in Malaysia, trying to contain this pandemic, and I congratulate all our healthcare workers and our frontliners for this excellent job. But what's also being severely disrupted is our medical education, is our education of our medical students from the first year towards the final year. But the more challenging as we have now is the core of our medical faculty or our medical course, degree course, is our clinical teaching or clinical encounters with our students. We've had so many challenges in terms of whether the students can't attend the face-to-face teaching in the wards, in the clinics. They can't attend our OT sessions and whatnot, and it's very challenging. It's also challenging for the teachers as well, where we're not able to see our students. We're not able to show them what we wanted to show in terms of our clinical acumen, clinical teaching, examination skills, history taking, and all that. So it's been quite a challenge. So over the last few months, we've been trying our best, especially in UKM, with our online teaching. The students all stayed at home, and we try out with our utmost best, trying to get our online teaching. We've had some very creative ways of doing clinical teaching online. Some have used role play, some have come up with scenarios and carried on with discussions. Some have used relatives even as a case to discuss with, which I thought was quite interesting. And some of us have even gone the extra mile where we've involved real patients with online discussions with the students. So we have a big meeting, including a real patient on the other side of the line. The patient was very cooperative, was very generous to lend us their time, and also some of their 4G time and things like that for them to have a chat with the students and impart some of their conditions and things. And I thought it was quite valuable. But obviously these are not easy times. We can't do that for all, and we have our limitations and all that. So whether we are doing a great job or not, only time will tell, only Allah will know. And for that, we have 4 experts here to have a discussion and to share their knowledge and wisdom in enhancing clinical teaching in the digital era. So I hope everyone can learn from them. And what we'll do is we have all the 4 speakers, panelists, to give their ideas, give their talks for 20 minutes each, and we'll reserve the Q&A towards the end. But feel free to write the questions on the screen for those who have questions, and we'll have it recorded. And towards the end of the webinar, we will read them one by one, and we'll ask the panelists to answer the questions. Hopefully, I will have, my hands are enough. I'm very quite far behind in technology, so I can get all these things sorted out for you all. Okay, so without further ado, the sequence is that we'll have Prof. Steve Trumbull first, and then Prof. Shahid Hassan, and then Dr. Tengku will be the 3rd speaker, and then our very own Prof. Ismail Saibun will be our final panelist to give his talk. Okay, so if everyone is okay, we're ready, we'll start off. It's 10:05 now. I don't want to waste any more of your time listening to me. It's best to listen to all the expert panelists that we have here. So allow me to introduce you all to our first panelist, Prof. Steve Trumbull. His topic would be engaging clinical teachers on online teaching. I'll just give you a brief bio. He's from the University of Melbourne. I've known him 5 years ago when I first did my graduate certificate in clinical teaching at his Excite Center in University of Melbourne. He is basically the head of department of the medical education, a role that includes coordinating the Melbourne Medical School's Doctor of Medicine program. He's a general practitioner by training, and he began his academic career developing teaching, research, and clinical services in the field of developmental disability medicine before taking leadership roles in vocational training and now entry to practice medical education. He established the Melbourne Medical School's Excite, which is basically excellence in clinical teaching program that awards courses, that provide award courses for clinicians who teach. He is involved in research across the spectrum of education for the health profession. When I first met him 5 years ago, it was an eye-opener for me. I was just basically a physician or a surgeon who had a bit of experience teaching undergrad students or even the junior staff, but the way he opened up his ideas on clinical teaching, clinical supervision, and all that was a godsend for us, and I hope to bring that more in our clinical teaching and supervision in our center here. So without further ado, I will invite Prof. Steve Trumbull to give his talk, which is Engaging Clinical Teachers on Online Teaching. Prof. Steve, please.
Thank you, Dr. Anil, and I'm delighted to be joining you, even if it is remotely. I must confess that one of the joys of my job is coming to Malaysia and enjoying the hospitality that UKM provides when I do visit, but that's not possible at the moment, so we make the very best of it. I think what we're doing today is indicative of what we're expecting our students and clinical teachers to do, to make compromises, to learn from each other. I'm intending to learn much more from you all than you'll learn from me, because I think we've all had unique experiences of this pandemic. I will confess I'm not in my office at the university. I'm actually at my my beach house, which is down on the coast of Victoria, and I don't think I'll ever go back to Melbourne. One point I want to make quite strongly today is I think we've all realised that there are some benefits that this pandemic has made us take on, that we will not return to business as usual because of what we've learned during this period. I think Malaysia has managed the pandemic very well compared to other countries, as has Australia in general terms. So we're lucky, I guess, that we haven't had the morbidity and mortality of some other countries we could name. So we've actually got the opportunity to take some learnings away from this experience without the great impact that others have experienced. I'll share my screen now so I can take you through the presentation. Where have I put it? There. Okay. Sorry, I'm struggling with too many. This is what I need to do. So there we are. Now, I've lost you. Could you see that screen? Can I get a thumbs up, Anil? Can you see the screen I'm sharing?
I can still see you, Prof. I haven't seen the screen. It was up for a bit, for a second, but it's gone again.
Yeah. You don't want to see me, you want to see the presentation, so I'll try one more time. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you're seeing that now.
Yes, Prof, we can see it now. You can see it now.
Great. All right, great. All right, well, let's go through then. So the University of Melbourne obviously has a lovely campus close to the city centre, but it's empty at the moment and has been for the past 3 months. Victoria, for those of you who don't know Australia very well, is down the bottom of the country. It's a smallish state. Our medical school is based in Melbourne, as you would expect, and we have a ring of clinical schools, rural clinical schools, about 100 kilometres radius around Melbourne in major regional centres. And we also have our clinical schools that are based in Melbourne itself. Our program is very much dependent on the clinical schools. Our students spend 3 of their 4 years in clinical placements. Only the first year do they spend on our main campus in the centre of the city. If I disappear suddenly during the course of this seminar, it's because one of our clinical schools is struggling to maintain placements at the moment with a second wave of infection that I'll describe in just a moment. But our clinical schools scattered around suburban Melbourne is where the vast majority of our learning has traditionally taken place. This has been Victoria, my state's experience of the COVID pandemic. You can see that, like everybody else, in March there was a steep increase in cases. Our government moved pretty quickly to insist on people isolating at home and working from home. So during this phase, the rise in cases dropped off pretty quickly and then was maintained through April, May and into June. This is when we did our major transformation of our medical course to online learning to keep the students learning in anticipation of them returning to placements in our second semester, which started yesterday. Unfortunately, what also happened in the last couple of days is cases have increased again quite steeply. And in fact, today's level is about 130 new cases. Still very small numbers on the global scale, but it has led to further restrictions. And in fact, this is the front page of the Melbourne newspaper today, where our state has been shut out by the other states of Australia with border restrictions put in place. For the first time in 100 years, Victorians cannot cross the border into other states of Australia because of this second wave of infections. So we're doing everything we can to keep our students in clinical placements as the infections increase again, but it's improving increasingly difficult, as you would all understand. And that's something I'll be talking about this morning. I didn't actually think in my lifetime I would see headlines like this about Victoria being isolated from the rest of Australia due to a viral pandemic. Before I talk about what's happening now, I want to go back just a little bit in history. March 2019, that's not a topographical error. That's actually when things really started for us with our move to encouraging clinicians to teach online. We started a project to redesign and redevelop our medical course. So from 2022, we want to have a completely different medical course. And the reason I guess I'm a little bit smug is that a lot of the things we wanted to change are actually coming about because of this pandemic, and I'll explain those. I think you'll recognise some of these yourself. One is that with that group of clinical schools I showed you, there's a great variation in the way our curriculum is delivered. Clinicians being clinicians will teach what they believe is most important to be taught and what their interest is, which means that our students were getting quite varied experiences at each clinical school. What we were planning to implement was a much more consistently delivered core curriculum. And the easiest way to do that is obviously to move it online and to broadcast from the central medical school to our clinical school site so that every student, no matter where they are, is receiving the same core of learning. And then to flip the classroom so that rather than somebody giving an hour's talk on diabetes or thoracic surgery, whatever it might be, it's a bite, a 15-minute video, which is then obviously discussed, as you'll be very familiar with in the flipped classroom approach, in a much more engaging, interactive and educationally sound way. So this was all in train during the last year. In order to do that, what was really important, this started 3 years ago, was a clear definition of learning objectives. As you'll know, students get very worried if they don't have a clear objective and what are they meant to learn and what's examinable and all those sorts of things. So our move was very much to clearly defining the learning objectives, what it is a student actually needs to learn, what it is a student could not graduate from our medical school without knowing if they're to be a decent doctor. So that work was actually well advanced and it stood us in good stead because it actually told us what we need to be teaching in these constrained environments. The other thing was then making sure that everything that was taught, and importantly, everything that was assessed, is aligned with these learning objectives, so that if you need clinicians to teach, you want them teaching what is actually important, what is aligned with the objectives, and what the students will be assessed on, because that makes them much less anxious. The other thing we wanted to build into our new course is much more opportunity for exploration and diversions. People would be saying to us, but you're trying to control your curriculum and make it very standardized and one size fits all. You know, that's incredibly restrictive. To which the response was, well, no, actually what we're doing is making the core consistent, which means that a whole lot of other things can go on around there that are much more engaging and interesting for the student. So we're building in opportunities to explore more deeply and to take diversions to find out other things beyond the core, but the core has got to be solid. The reason for this comes from a picture which I've shown, I think, some people before. This hangs on the wall in our now abandoned medical school. And it's a picture from the very early days of the medical school. And you can see there the classic teacher teaching on anatomical specimens to a group of students who look incredibly well dressed, but a little bit disengaged and bored. The thing that amuses me is that next to this picture on the wall in our medical school is another picture which shows the launch of our medical course in 2010, the revised medical course. To me, those students look no more interested or engaged than the old-time students. They're probably a little less well dressed, but you can see that they are just as bored and disengaged in that lecture theatre setting. So this is what we're trying to change with our revised medical course. I'm going to take an extra technological risk now and show you a brief video, which I'm assured is going to work it's only 3 minutes, but it just explains what we're doing and how that ties into what we're now doing during this COVID pandemic. So we'll see how we go.
The 21st century needs a special kind of doctor. We need doctors who embrace new ways to learn and adapt and relearn.
Oops.
The 21st century needs a special kind of doctor. We need doctors who embrace new ways to learn and adapt and relearn. Doctors who pioneer and question and educate. Doctors who change the world one patient at a time. At the University of Melbourne, we're making changes to our Doctor of Medicine program, so every graduate becomes the medical professional the 21st century needs. The medical professional who is collaborative, multi-skilled, and ready for the global changes of tomorrow. We want you to build your own medical degree. Here's how it works. A Doctor of Medicine at the University of Melbourne typically spans 4 years. Our dedication to excellence won't change. Each year, you'll complete a certain number of core units, many of which will be accessible online. This means every student learns the same content across every campus and every clinic. Study with total flexibility from your smartphone or laptop, whenever, wherever, by yourself or with your classmates. Your practical time in clinics and hospitals will start in your first year. This gives you more face time with highly regarded experts and more time to master the craft of medicine by being with patients, the people you're training to serve. Every MD involves research, and you can focus yours in a field that most interests you. You'll have the option to start this in your first year too, so you can build on it every year with support from your supervisors. Your discovery subjects are your chance to explore what you love. It's your medical degree and your future, so you'll design your own discovery path. You have the opportunity to explore a wide range of topics or take a deep dive into your future specialty. The choice to learn extra skills and even take on a joint degree can help you set yourself apart in your medical career. You can also set the pace of your degree. You can pause for a time or study at a slower speed to accommodate other interests. There are hundreds of possibilities for your degree. Whatever your plans, you can take your MD into your own hands and build a degree that's uniquely you. The University of Melbourne's Doctor of Medicine. Make it yours.
So you can see there that we were well on track last year for a lot of the things we've had to do anyway with the shift of most of the content delivery online. What's missing, obviously, is the clinical placements and the clinical connection with patients and with clinicians, which I'll talk about now as I finish off my presentation. March 2020, we were hit, like all of you, by the onset of the pandemic and the collapse of clinical placements. We withdrew our students in one group, all students from all placements, because things were ramping up to the point that we needed to give our clinicians room to prepare for what we expected to be a massive increase in seriously ill people requiring intensive care. So in the course of just a few days, we rapidly shifted our medical course wholly online, and the students have not set foot on our university campus for 3 months until yesterday, which is already looking a bit shaky. So the question that you've really asked is more about keeping clinical teachers engaged in teaching. I thought it would be useful to talk with you now in these 10 minutes about how it worked for us and whether anything that we've done is useful for you. The first thing we thought was really important is to recognise that clinicians are firstly clinicians, and if they have clinical work to do, that does take priority over student learning. I think a number of clinicians were quite relieved by that, and they actually worked with us better because they felt that they were able to deal with their clinical requirements while also freeing up what time they could to help us with teaching students. Of course, because the surge of cases did not occur as was anticipated, they then ended up being quite bored. And surgeons in particular who are not operating became our very best teachers because they were very keen to fill the days when they weren't in operating theatres because of the cancellation of elective surgery. We made it very clear what expectations were, and we understood that they had clinical commitments and that really it was about what they could do and also how we could most efficiently make use of their teaching. They're not online learning producers, they're not videographers, they're not experts in computer communication. So we made it very, very simple for them to record to a webcam pretty much like this. And that was actually the quality of the production that we needed from them. And we actually used some students who were very keen in this area to finesse the product and make it more acceptable. Our students were quite happy with that. We also made it very clear that we were focusing tightly on this essential core, so that helped get our message across. You know, if there's limited amount of teaching available, please don't waste it on things that are not absolutely essential to moving our students towards graduation. And that seemed to be a message that was well received. However, the question was asked, what is core and what is actually at the centre of what our students need to know? This led to two important pieces of work, and I've sent through a couple of resources that I'll show in just a moment. The first was to establish in our university an intern readiness task force, a small group of people handpicked who were experts in what it was that our students needed to be able to do on day one when they were employed as junior doctors in the hospital. So what it was that made them ready to work as interns. Another group was set up that we called the Clinical Learning Task Force. So that group was given the mission of figuring out, okay, that's the target that we have to hit. How are we going to do it? And that was the group that came up with a whole lot of strategies for clinical learning and teaching in an online environment, and also identifying those things that can't be taught online and which are going to have to be caught up by our students when they can return to placements, which is what's happening right at this moment. So two resources were produced. This one's actually a national resource, which I've shared. This was developed by all the Australian medical schools together and New Zealand medical schools together to figure out, again, very simply, what are the core competencies for safe clinical practice, building on what was a list that had been sort of rather half-heartedly developed, was then fully fleshed out. What was it that we needed to be able to see our students doing to let us know that they were ready to progress to work as junior doctors? So it's covering all the things you would expect, from prescribing skills to therapeutic procedures, clinical knowledge and skills and things like that. And as I say, I've sent that document through so it can be distributed via this webinar to those who are interested in seeing what's in there. So that was the target. The other thing though was how to get there. And the other document I've sent through was the report of our clinical learning task force and the strategy that they developed, which outlines different approaches to getting clinical teaching delivered in an online space, or strategies for catching up students. We actually did major reshaping of our curriculum to move around our research subject, so that was done during the shutdown. And so students were free to return to clinical placements without having to go through a full semester of research training. So 2020 for us has been very much a year of knowledge transmission. Now this is a major problem. I'm not that sure about Malaysian medical students, but the average Australian medical student is very happy sitting in the library with a book. And our mission over the past 20 years has been to push the students to spend more time with patients and to learn from patients and other doctors rather than just from books or online. So this has been a challenge for us and something we haven't quite resolved. Two things surprised me in the past week. One was how disappointed our first year students are at not being able to be in groups and being doctors and learning about it. And they feel quite disappointed that their first year of medical school experiences have been online. The other thing that surprised me is how our students are struggling to learn professionalism in the online environment. So much is learned by standing alongside doctors, nurses, other health professionals, and seeing the way they go about their business. That hidden curriculum that's very difficult to simulate online, but which we're now doing through more deliberate teaching of professionalism rather than hoping that they'll pick it up by osmosis. We've found our students are very engaged with online learning, as I've said. Many prefer it to learning in the clinical spaces, which we're going to have to undo to some extent. They've turned up all the time. There are many, many more questions being asked in the online environment than in the lecture theatre, as you would expect. The students are finding they've got more time in the day. We've got to be very careful not to overload that, and you can't spend the whole day on Zoom, even though it's very seductive to slip in another hour's tutorial because you know the students are sitting at their computers and ready to go. They've also surprised us by being very tolerant of low production quality. One of the big barriers to us moving online was thinking how expensive it would be to produce very high production value resources. They actually don't expect it. They're just as happy with something with a, a microphone and a camera and a green screen, and that's all that you need. You don't need a formal studio production every time. So that was quite good. Our clinicians also ended up being very engaged. They found it much more convenient to do a single recording of a presentation than to have to repeat it, in some cases, 27 times during the course of a year. So you can imagine they saw that, and even not having to travel and park and simple things like that. They also enjoyed many more questions being asked, and they felt they were able to monitor the group so much better. I can't see you all at the moment. I must have done something wrong, but being able to monitor the engagement of a group that you're talking to is much easier than in a lecture theatre or even a tutorial room. One thing that again surprised us a bit was that students had to be instructed in online professionalism. Anil mentioned earlier about patients being involved in clinical teaching online. That's absolutely fabulous, but it's very disconcerting to that patient if a family member walked past, or if the student's sitting in a cafeteria, not now, or something like that. So we made a briefing video and had the students actually sign off on their understanding of what online professionalism meant in terms of paying respect to the teacher and to any patients involved, keeping information private, and also making sure that conversations could not be overheard by other people. So what does our future hold? The new normal. This is what we're talking about today. We will not go back to the old way because it wasn't a good way, but also we won't have the opportunity to go back to exactly the way it was. As I've indicated, I'm spending today chasing placements to try and keep our students engaged with clinical learning as various wards and departments are shut down when new cases are discovered and staff are put into isolation or quarantine. So that's going to be the new normal of clinical placements. We had it good before, it's a different world. But then again, online learning offers a whole lot of new opportunities. What placements we have, we'll make very, very careful use of and make sure that students are learning actively and not just standing around in the corridors. We want them to be more actively engaged and actually be seen as useful members of the team. One thing we're struggling with today is actually trying to monitor. As you'll know, it's easy if every student does the same thing. You just know that they're doing that rotation, they're getting that teaching, that'll be absolutely fine. We're having to basically develop an individual learning pathway for each of our 350 students at each year level. So that's proving too difficult to do on paper or even on Excel. We're going to need to develop some sort of e-portfolio that tracks students from moment to moment to keep track of what they're learning, and also if they're coming into contact with any COVID cases. The final thing, though, is that the big lesson we've learnt is our students need to be seen as useful members of the clinical team. Our university's nursing students weren't withdrawn from placements because they were seen as having a value to the workforce. Our medical students were not seen as being useful. So our new normal is that our students have a valid role of participation within clinical teams, and they contribute to the work of the team in some sort of way. We're still negotiating that. And there'll be another pandemic, so let's get ourselves prepared for it. So this was our student conference held a couple of years ago, all 1,400 medical students in one space. We held one 2 weeks ago, the students organised it, it was all virtual and it was absolutely brilliant. The clinicians involved in it said they've never had such a good teaching experience as being involved in a virtual conference. So again, we won't be going back to spending $500,000 Australian dollars a year on hiring a venue when in fact we can get better outcomes online. So thank you for your patience as I went through that. I've got no idea how much time I took because I couldn't see my clock. And hopefully everything worked. Arnold, are we okay?
Yep, you're right on time. It's brilliant. A lot of great points that you brought up during the talk, where I can see where Melbourne was heading before the COVID from the way you're looking at your curriculum and all that. And I hope most of the future medical schools will be looking at that, so we can have more clinical engagement. But there's sort of a huge rock coming down on your new curriculum, isn't it? Then kaboom! Sorry, you can't see the patients now, so everything has to be online. And I mean, like from our center as well, we've been trying our best, trying to get the engagement with the students. And you are right from saying that the student engagement, somehow they're a bit more engaging with the screen in front of them. I don't know, maybe it's the way they've been brought up with this, the internet and the conversations and whatnot. So you see more of them getting engaged, but you lose that authenticity, isn't it? Without being in the ward, you can't observe. I mean, we can always comment on professionalism, and we try and do that when we're parents, trying to tell the kids, no, you don't do this, don't do that, but not seeing it themselves gives it a bit more difficulty, isn't it, with the authenticity? But that's great. It's amazing. Yeah. And what the future holds, yes, I hope once everything starts to normalize, we try and use this to further enhance our teaching, isn't it? With the online as an adjunct rather than anything, not as a replacement, but as an adjunct, obviously, to help us with our future education and getting.
That's going to be a skill, I think, in figuring out what it can replace beneficially. Yeah. We're forced to it at the moment, which is probably not a bad way of breaking some old habits, but we don't want to drift back to exactly where we were. But then again, we also want to regain the best aspects.
Yep, true. And it's quite interesting. There's a lot of chats here saying that how about the students, how they feel about it. One of the chats saying, how about the students' point of view? Are they comfortable with the new way of teaching? Part of his personality. I mean, we'll address that towards the end of the webinar as well, with all the issues, the chats and the questions that were coming out. But these are important things. The student feedback is very important, that we get what they view and all that. And we, same as UKM, we're also having Our own students just started last Friday, and they're filling up the wards with our standard operating procedures, no more than few students at a time and all that. And they're excited to come back. But I think they've learned quite a bit as well from this online teaching. So thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. We'll get back to you with all the Q&As at the end of the webinar. And I'll start introducing our next panelist, it's Prof. Shahid, whose topic will be e-learning innovations for clinical teaching and assessment. That'll be very good. I've known Prof. Shahid from our time with MedNet, with our many meetings in UM at the Cube. Prof. Shahid Hassan is primarily an ENT surgeon with a subspecialty in head and neck and thyroid surgery, and has accomplished his MHPE from Maastricht University, Netherlands in 2007. He has worked as a medical educationist in USM. He was head of medical education at UPM, and he's also UNIZA, which is University Sultan Zainuddin in Terengganu, and he's currently a professor in the School of Medicine and IMU Center for Education in the International Medical University nearby. He has been awarded with the WIPO and ITEX Gold Medal and Excellent Scientist Award for Innovative Research. He has published well over 115 research papers and books. He is also the overseas editor of Pakistan Journal of ORL and member editorial board of a number of journals. He has been the vice president of our Malaysian Association of Educators in Medicine and Health Sciences, and also lead of assessment subgroup of the MedNet. Interestingly, the MedNet has a few subgroups: assessment, student engagement, and all that. And the biggest subgroup is the assessment subgroup, and he's the head of that. So all the medical educationists in Malaysia, for all universities, private and public, that's the biggest group, and Prof. Shahid is the head of that subgroup. So you can imagine his experience and knowledge in all this. He's also now the faculty training lead in the School of Medicine and IMU during the COVID-19. So without further ado, I would like to invite Prof. Shahid now to give his talk on e-learning innovations for clinical teaching and assessment. Please, Prof. Shahid. Please unmute your mic, Prof. Shahid. Unmute your mic.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Yes, we can see your
Okay.
slides. Yep.
Thank you very much.
View.
I'll do the slide view. Okay. Is that okay, right? Thank you very much, Anil, for the comprehensive introduction. And I'm really humbled, and thank you to the organizers, UKM, Prof. Helena, for inviting me for this session. So without further ado, let's start the task. Prof. Helena consulted me a few times to give me finally settled with this topic, which is about the e-learning innovations for clinical teaching and assessment. And when I approved this topic, the next very day, I was wondering what innovation I have done. But I tell you one thing, in our current distinct situation, we actually must also understand that the teachers are in dual role now. They are in dual role. Teaching and assessment, that is our core business, but now researching, innovating, and publishing in the given challenge of the COVID era is something additionally has come on to us, and we should take this responsibility. And from the day one, when I, being a medical educationist, give me an opportunity actually to think beyond being a clinician. So when the first thing I was worried was students' clinical teaching, particularly the bedside teaching and their exposure, which they have limited, particularly in ENT, they have only just 2 weeks posting. So how to make it up? that was the thing. So that led me to certain innovations. There one is, the first one I'll be dealing with is the bedside teaching online. Sounds a little illogical, but with little efforts we made it logical. Remember that when we talk about in COVID era, something which we must realize that compromises will be there. Compromises in delivery of the curriculum is always there. Medical education has a lot of compromises. Assessment, to me itself, is a great compromise, right? Assessment becomes a nightmare for the students. You take away assessment, probably a student will learn better. This is my very personal opinion, but what I am trying to emphasize that during this challenge, we actually was looking into how to compensate. Never mind if we have some compromises. Those compromises will always be there, but the point is to keep moving, marching on, right? That was that's some message that we got during COVID. Those who was in blended learning did better than those who were just very traditional and conventional in their curriculum delivery. So first thing was the bedside teaching, which I named as BST. B mean teaching by all means, right? Besides, this stands for besides. So I put this B into ST, made it BST, teaching by all means, even if we are in MCO. Now, the online version of the authentic BST has been developed. Synthetic systemic instructional process. It involves a lot of pedagogy and technology get together in this era. It helps us a lot. And the term new word that technology, actually, I love it, has been proposed from Prof. Razan from Malaysia, actually. So this technology is something we should work on, and we must move on and equip ourselves with the technology if you want to be surviving in teaching and learning as a teacher, right? So a hypothetical, deductive, and think aloud approach was the principle beside the experiential cycle and the reflective practice. And Gagnis, we got a lot of influences from the Gagnis 9-step events. Next is the TBL. It's not my produced model. It is already there in literature. Only thing is, with little thought, we made it online. And I will share this with you guys because we have done this TBL. Incidentally, was the first TBL workshop that I did with Prof. Nabisha was in UKM, 2015. Thereby, I implemented it in ISDA. I'll share that with you, and now converted it to online. Then about the assessment side, on the other side, the TBL, one thing is very interesting, that teaching, learning, and assessment goes hand in hand in this model, okay? Now, OSCE, how can we deliver? So thought of integrated OSCE, and that gave me an opportunity to revisit long case. I'm very strong supporter of the long cases, but since for reason the long cases as a clinician we know cannot be enough in number to be reliable and valid, but those long cases are the real clinical competency tests for the students. So this gave me an opportunity with this integrated OSCE. Number one, more time for the communication skills, and sort of bringing back the long case through this OSCEs. Right. Finally, I'll share with you simulation, some of the virtual medical clinic, which is part and parcel of the IMU setup. And we have provided with the templates, and we have to give our cases, and the IMU e-learning department make a good sort of sessions for the students to learn on their own. Okay. I cannot move my slide. I cannot move my slide. Something is stuck here.
Can you try down there?
Yeah,
there.
Got it. Okay, got it. Okay, now I'll be using a lot of infographic here, and forgive me for that because in this given time, which is limited, if I go by text, probably I'll make no sense for any of you. So let me get, so all this will be mostly with infographic. That I love infographics, takes little time to explain things. So the first thing on the top, when you look at here, is the experiential learning principle involved. The learning, you have to have a context, then brainstorming with the prior knowledge, the experience and reflection, and then the feedback and further learning new knowledge, right? Now the approach, the two approaches was Barro's approach of the hypothetical deductive approach, whereby student will be generating the hypothesis, and then they will be re-looking into it with the information coming. And think aloud. Think aloud is a wonderful thing that you can bring in this era where the students have lost their social contact, right? Make them to recontact online, never mind, but still they can think together. And this approach was encouraged, and we practice it successfully here. Then with this, at the end, we have the reflective practice, which is mandatory with this model, because what the student learned, they have to give a reflective writing, and feedback is the important part of it. So that's why we take a smaller number, 6 to 8 in one session, so that the supervisor or facilitator can give feedback immediately. So in the first place, what we do is we introduce a clinical problem, just a clinical problem, like a trigger, PBL trigger, nothing in detail, right? Then students are asked to think together, right? And start asking questions, and the supervisor will take the role of a clinician, a patient. So he's in a dual role now, and he has to tell this. And this actually, we hold a session, a 5 to 6 slide session to tell them everything about this, what this model is. Because this era, remember, this has given another opportunity for these students to be made aware of the how best adult can learn, right? This model actually will have 5 slides pretext for them. Then we have, after the history is accomplished, then they will chalk down their differential diagnosis, then they'll move on to the physical examination, and then again they will re-look into the differential diagnosis. Then they will ask what investigations they really want, and here the supervisor will be more in a supervisor role rather than the patient, and ultimately management, right? So, and reflective practice is part and parcel. So I take you through very quickly how exactly it is done. So for example, this is the clinical problem given to them, and after this they will be asked, what do you think? What are your questions on interviewing this patient? Then supervisor will take the role of a patient, right? So he will keep answering, and these are the number. We take a small number, but I tried, because there was a request to me, 3 batches together requested me if we can do with 24 students. I did it, and these are the opportunities we explore, right? Bedside teaching, you cannot imagine to be doing in more than 6 to 8. So anyway, that was done for some of these students who missed out. So they put together groups, and I did it with 24 also, but this is the ideal way doing it, right? And these are we encourage them to put their questions on chat box rather than using their mic. And this was in the feedback was encouraged, because some of those who were not in the session also went through the recording, which is always available immediately after on the Microsoft Stream. And moreover, the students said some of the questions we went through, and we found that we missed out on that occasion, right? So this is how you go about. Then they will put down there, and somebody, a supervisor can do this online using a PowerPoint to write down what the differential they have been talking about. These differential ones, and then they move on to next session, which is a physical examination. Physical examination, right? In physical examination, they will ask their questions what they really want, right? Here we cannot perform, but I like some time back I listened to Prof. Ismail that sometime if you available someone who can act as an SP. So my wife, who is a GP in Putrajaya, she was home, so I requested her if she can allow me to demonstrate an examination of the neck. And that was done, and students liked it very much. They were full of thanks for my wife, and then she was encouraged also to whenever I need, but of course you have to do it within the constraints, right? Of not exposing much and all. So wherever you can do that. So that was the examination. So after the examination, they will re-look into their differential diagnosis again. And then those differential diagnoses, what they do not find relevant will be striked out or removed, and relevant will be retained. Then next, they will be given what investigation they actually want. And then again, the same exercise will go on, and then the real investigation will be shared. But this, yeah, I forgot to tell you that this model works well with those who have been archiving their clinical work. So if you have been archiving, and with my ENT colleagues that we were doing with right from the inception that I was involved in the postgraduate program in 1998 rather, when I came to Malaysia. And since then, with our postgraduate teaching, we have been archiving a lot of our cases, because at one time in postgraduate program, only 3 students will be attached to my subspecialty. So optimize my teaching, I will archive this thing and will take a combined class later. So this all archives is really working well for me now. Okay, so finally they reached to a provisional diagnosis after the discussion and all, and then supervisor debriefing. If you are ready with the topic, you have developed this topic as a clinical problem introduced to the students. So give the differential diagnosis if you have a list. So I have a number of those cases. So I just put it, instead of just giving them it's better to give them a visual impact. Visual impact is much more better than the. So then quickly there will be a sort of display of the very short video telling them how really this was managed. Right, so this was a branchial cyst as they diagnosed. So very quick, from all archive you can get this, and then ultimately on the other side the specimen removed. And as a surgeon pathologist, never happy with me, I would always cut open on the table to have my own confirmation of the diagnosis, and that which happens actually made me little happy, but you shouldn't do it because pathologist doesn't like it. They want the intact specimen. But there's a theory that like branchial cysts will have a lymphoid follicles in somewhere at the end, and I just want to check that on. So anyway, that will be done. So I have to move on. Okay, next is you post them with the on chat box. You give them reflective practice structured table and feedback if they have any network problem and other things. And these are some of the very encouraging feedback from the student which I have put. Really encouraged me a lot. Because they found that this was very good for them to really be back to bedside teaching online. Okay, so next I'm moving on to the TBL, which was in UKM 2015. This was done, and it takes 4 principles, right? We have outside teaching session, outside class session, in class session, which is outside is phase 1, where we post reading material to the students, and the time given, the reading material will cater to that time. Okay, then phase 2 is when they come, they immediately take 5 to 10 items OBA, or you can put any thing, multiple true false and all, and then from those OBAs they will take individually the entire group. It may be a larger class, entire group. Then they are divided into group is actually assigned before the class. And then they will take as the same OBA they will take as a group. And this is very good, very interesting for the student, because they will discuss, they will do it, and then they get partial credit for each. And the third is that we give them in-class assignment, and then there's a team interaction, right? So individual work they start on, then it move on to small group discussion, then the total class discussion, and the impact in learning. How it takes, before coming to the class, they are 40% prepared. As they move on until end, they are 100% with the assessment also involved and the feedback given. Now it works like this. We have outside class, and then inside class activity, right? And then inside class activity basically is the IRAD, individual readiness assurance, and the group readiness assurance test. And then there is some of those assignments. And then these are actually IRAD, GRAD, peer rating is very important in this. And it is realistic peer rating, right? We make students to learn this realistic. So these are the percentages, how they develop into it, right? This is a little cumbersome, but I can explain in this session are, webinars are just the appetizer, yeah? You have to have a session on that. So these are the way the peer and the supervisor's rating is done, right? Previously, I have been using the scratch cards, right? Now here, the scratch card cannot be used online. So we developed this with the help of the e-learning. With the idea I gave, they developed this one, right? How to do the scratch card use and for the teamwork, right? So as they use a scratch card, if I have here, I can show you. Yes, say they go online and one leader of the group leader is given to log in. And as they will log in, right? I hope it works here. Okay, I have to put the number, my group number. So if group number, I didn't put, okay, I'm group 5, for example, then I go in and I get this. So then these are the questions the group member will say, the leader which is assigned to log in with this, he will go and, for example, scratch this. Please try again. So try again, then I might go to the, next, right? Sorry. There's something. Okay, so, okay, then I go and, for example, good job. Okay, then again, they will go and if they are wrong, they will, so for each attempt, for first attempt, they will get 3 marks, second 2 marks, and third attempt 1 mark. So each attempt actually will count for them. Okay, so for example, good job. Okay, so I quickly go through so show you at the end what is the good job. I'm just taking the right answer so that I move fast, right? So this one is probably this one. Good so job. End of the day, as you go on, the students will get actually their score, right? 5 out of 5 is done. It should show the score actually. I don't know why it doesn't show. So immediately the supervisor will know the actual score of the team. Okay. Now moving back to this. Okay. Next is the integrated OSCE. Again, I'm using an infographic. Integrating OSCE is actually we divide one OSCE station into further 4 stations, right? So say the station, each station will take 5 minutes, 1 minute for reading. So total OSCE station, which is divided into 4, will take 20 plus 4 minutes to read. This makes 24 minutes for each OSCE, right? And here the students are given, for example, in station 1, they are just provided with a SP, right? They will go and then the file is uploaded and they can download the file because we create the breakout rooms. In Zoom breakout room and in Microsoft, it is the channel, right? So student would know and the briefing is given to them and then they will have a SP sitting there, they will interview and supervisor will mark them. Next, they will move to the substation 2 where they are provided, these are the things they have been provided with an SP and some of the, here, this is the number 2, the SP and some of the examination picture exhibits. So they have to go through that exhibit and explain it to the patient. What is his problem? And supervisors is marking them for. So here, if you look at previously we were doing communication skill mostly in the history. Here the communication skill students get engaged also. And then in third, I'm rushing a little fast to finish. And the third, it is the investigations, right? So they are given certain investigation. They will download from the file immediately in the room that they are. And then they will have to explain after having made up their mind for those investigations, what the outcome is, they will explain it to another SP. Everywhere you see the SP is there, right? So the SP, they will explain it to the SP, their problem, and address the concern. And then finally would be the management plan. What management plan actually the student has as a doctor for that patient, right? And then there will be an overall, this is OSCE, so we do checklist score marking as well as global rating. So if you look at the global rating, and the rubric is here, we also look at professionalism, how they talk to and then everywhere, every station will have a rubric, and then there'll be a global rating, which in IMU setup is 5. We start with the overall clinical competence marked by the supervisor, which is fail, borderline, pass, good, and excellent. And this is used for the regression method to calculate the cutoff point in the standard setting, okay? So this is how we work. So for example, here they move to one station and they are given, there's a simulated patient here, take a complete history and address the patient concern. And then the picture will be shown to them and there's some explanation given, if not clear, right, picture. So then they will move on to another station where they have some other things to do, physical examination, investigative skill, and then again, overall, I'm giving you the management plan. So finally, I'm coming you to a virtual medical clinic. This clinic, it will take time to really take you through a round of this clinic. Is very excellent model produced in IMU by the e-learning department. We have just to submit our cases on a template they provide, and then their team will convert it into a good real session, which is not only session for learning, but at the same time, assessment goes hand in hand. So time doesn't permit me to take you through a round. It will take, I have to log in and then show you, right? So going on to the summarizing it, bedside teaching looks a little illogical, but we have made it logical with some innovations. TBL is an appropriate approach available in literature. All you have to do is to make it online. And it's an excellent model where teaching and assessment goes in hand. I recommend, my recommendation in 3-4 international webinars that I was taken, I have been telling everybody move on to this model. And you will have a lot of formative assessment over time. Those data points of the assessment of the students can be used for summative assessment accumulatively in given era of the challenging era that we are going through. And this, the purpose will, at least you will know. You see, we have to make another compromise here. Don't just bank on the summative assessment. Break up the boundary between formative and summative assessment. Make it something which is really usable. Formative assessment, the moment we think, you say, decision cannot be taken. Okay, cannot be taken, but let it over the time happen and make a committee and make a accumulative decision on multiple data points. Those formative assessment are very useful, and at least you'll know how the students are progressing, right? Then IOSCE, integrated OSCE is a practical approach that we have created and practiced in School of Dentistry. This has been, but they are in the first session. They are is going to be day after tomorrow I think, but it's going to be on campus. But we have all the technology ready for the online, and the virtual medical clinics is the other reality that we already have in IMU. Thank you very much for your time and listening.
Thank you very much, Prof. Shahid. That was extremely engaging. A lot of things that we can get, and there are already a few questions popping up here and there. I mean, we will, in the interest of time, we'll keep it towards the end, and then we'll address them in the chat and also in the Q&A sessions. I kept a record of
answer those questions when time comes, right? Thank you very much.
If you can, yeah, and then we'll just address that at the end as well. Very interesting. The BEST, the TBL, IOSCE, and VMC. These are all new things that we want to try and start to integrate into our new norm, as we say in our education. The TBL is very interesting. Even during face-to-face, we still have some way of trying to get them engaged in the TBL, if you know what I mean, with team-based learning, with the big classroom and all that. And with the advent of online teaching now, whether it will make it easier for us to transition into TBL with being online. The other thing with the BEST, one question, I'm cheating here a bit. Are you using it as a synchronous or asynchronous?
Synchronous. You mean TBL?
No, the BEST, BEST.
BST synchronous. I'm using synchronous, yeah.
Okay. And then you
but
allow
the
them for
recording would be available, and those recording on Microsoft Stream can be watched. Those who want to revisit the session, or those who haven't attended can revisit, but it is synchronous. Both the supervisor and the students are online at the same time.
Okay, that's brilliant. The integrated OSCE is very interesting concept. We'll probably have more conversations with you after the webinars. A lot of people will probably start messaging you and asking you about the integrated OSCEs. And also this very interesting with the virtual medical consultation. Just a quick, who do you get to volunteers for this virtual medical consultation? Is it with creating a scenario or using SPs and whatnot?
Okay, this is basically the clinical scenarios, which are authentic actually from your clinical practice. Those scenarios we have from e-learning team, we have a template. So we have to submit all the information to them. Then they will create it into like students will log in. And then first thing will be, there will be a patient picture actually shown, not as a simulated patient sitting over there. And then there will be a dialogue between the patient and the student visiting it. And then what question actually they will ask. So those questions they have to tick off that, and then as they move along, they will have some of the item on assessment. And some of the matching, for example, in CT scan, certain points will be shown on the CT scan, and then they have to place it to the proper box, which point actually is, and those boxes will be the information given about the CT scan. So it's a great learning where students are not tested sort of from their recall. Actually, multiple explanation of those CT scan on data points at different part of the CT scan will be provided. They can read on their own leisure time. There's no hurry, they can take time, but they have to finally select the right answer. And then as they move along, ultimately they will be challenged with some complex question. As they move along and they do well, the complexity of the question will go according to their performance. So end of the day, they will have the, they will submit and they will get their result also, how did they perform. They can revisit again and they can find where they perform wrongly. So there is an opportunity, like in all simulation, we have an opportunity to learn from our mistake. So they can go back and learn from the mistake. So this is a virtual clinic is basically a clinical session created for the students self-directed learning or on their free slots in the timetable. They can visit and they can find a relevant case, though we do not have many cases, but clinicians are encouraged to submit their cases, and complete information you have to provide, like one I use in my bedside teaching. This kind of information, if I provide them, they will easily actually convert it into this virtual medical clinic.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Prof. Shahid. We have to move on, I'm afraid, in the interest of time. We'll probably have to extend this anyway. But I need to invite our next panelist, and then we'll have a lot of, I think we'll have a long Q&A sessions. There's already a few questions coming up for the panelists. But I have to introduce our next panelist now for the next topic, which is the application of animation in medical education, which is very interesting. Our next panelist is Dr. Tengku Putri Norisha Tengku Syariman. She is a lecturer in the field of media arts studies at the Faculty of Creative Multimedia, MMU Cyberjaya. She is also the director of the Center for Online Distance Learning, an administrative and development center for MMU courses offered online, such as Executive Masters of Business, EMBA, dedicated to working adult students. Her research is focused on digital multimedia that is closely related to content. Her scope of interest have evolved into a wide range of digital contexts, from mobile e-learning to electronic arts. She has produced a variety of articles on multimodal literacy that are closely related to digital-based content, in particular how individuals find and understand information through a variety of different digital content. Her research also covers the impact of new technologies on understanding and learning, while at the same time developing interactive applications that will have a huge impact on individuals. I love MMU. They give my kids a lot of entertainment, and I'm happy for that. We go to a lot of the movies from MMU Productions, Bobo Boy, Agent Ali, and all that, and also Upin and Ipin. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Tengku Norisha for her interesting talk. Doctor, unmute your mic. Unmute.
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. Good morning to all professors in this webinar, as well as to all participants. I'm deeply humbled that UKM has invited me to be on the speakers, because I'm actually quite new to the academic world, being a practitioner, basically a practitioner in media production all this while. But today I will not be basically my presentation today will be basically how we can look into the disciplines and principles of applying animation in the medical setting. But I'm intrigued by what Dr. Shahid presented on TBL, because basically we are also implementing TBL, Dr. Shahid, in MMU. And like IMU, we have found that TBL has been very effective in delivering online teaching and learning with our students. So we are doing 100%. It's 100% online as well in MMU. Yeah. All right. So I'll go to.
Before that, can you just adjust the camera? They want to see the full.
Oh, all right. They can see the face. Okay. Can you see me now? All right. Okay, but I will go now to my screen. I'll share my screen. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, all right. Okay, all right. Okay. So okay. All right. So basically when we talk about animation, it is we think that now animation has been optimized widely in the medical industry. And we see that it's applied in patient education, in drug mechanism of action, in surgical planning and training, and in so many ways animation has been used. So we see that with the emergence of e-learning, especially online learning or blended learning, a need has arisen to present information in a visually appealing and informative format. But animation is not a magic wand. Do not think it's a magic wand, because we still need the instructors, the lecturers, to basically, further explain what is in the animation. But we could see the animation is basically a powerful tool as a means of communication. Okay, so so basically here it says here American animation. You can actually adapt it, in different types of training, whether it's for hospitals, when you want to give information to patients, or for pre-service health workers, in medical schools and so on. And it actually focuses on translating very complicated, very complex information, which are usually use a lot of medical jargons and language, and we then translate it into moving motion visualization, which actually simplifies the whole concept of medical information. It is something that is more simpler for the viewer or the student or the patient to understand, and it will perhaps be will something they can keep longer in their minds. Because we know that according to Edgar, what's his name? He says that 50%, if we have 50% of learning will be further improved if we have it in visual format. All right. Right. Okay. So there are 5 types of medical animation. And the first one is what we call complex animation. Now, this is really expensive to develop because it involves using virtual reality. But it's like when you really want to immerse the user in the actual process of, for example, a surgery. Okay, so but this and you can also, like, if, for example, you want to really explore different parts of the body and the different functions of the body and the mechanism of every organ. Now, we can do it through virtual reality and even mixed reality, but this is very expensive. I think even in Malaysia, it can cost thousands or even millions to just develop and a VR content. Okay, but however, it is very good. We are able to do it because you can really see the functionings of different organs and in really very detail. But it's quite expensive. Okay, the next one is 3D medical animation. It's slightly less expensive than the virtual reality content, but it's still very accurate. And you can actually do a lot of, again, like virtual VR, we can actually see something that we can't actually see through the naked eye, right? You can see the, the really detailed, parts of the organs and how, for example, how viruses, for example, how the COVID-19 virus attacks the human body, in such a very accurate way. It is possible to 3D medical animation, but still, this is still also expensive to do. In terms of manpower and to capture the different visuals that are needed to create the 3D animation, that's where the money, the costs will go up. Okay, and so from MME point of view, we do a lot of, for example, for medical animation, it's preferable to do 2D motion graphics, which is more feasible in terms of costing as well as manpower. And we say 2D motion graphics as well, whether you have characters or non-characters, is more widely used in healthcare education, for training courses, and also for public awareness education. And we can actually use 2D motion graphics as well to simulate certain, training. We can simulate to 2D motion graphics. So in fact, even 2D motion graphics can look like 3D. Okay, and it can be adaptable to diverse types of, devices. Because it can be also be delivered online through mobile devices, through the laptop computers and so on. So medical motion graphics are simpler in movement, and we can actually represent the movements in simpler way and at cheaper cost. But I think most lecturers will use this one, which is the blackboard, or whiteboard or blackboard animation, where you can actually just use certain softwares like Camtasia, or Screenomatic. You can actually capture, the lecturer's presentation. Okay, it's basically it's an explainer video. You explain your presentation. And this is really very simple. You just need a minimum requirement of a camera, a good script, and good storytelling, and you can actually animate the movements as well. Just using your own illustrations. So this is very simple type animations. Even a lecturer can do, okay, compared to creating 2D or 3D animations. All right. So I'd like to show now you an example of a 2D animation that I think we once created for HQ. A very simple one, but that's 2D animation. Okay. Can you see? Can everyone see this?
No, but we're still seeing the quick presentation, basic trending.
Oh, okay. I think okay. Wait. So I have to close that one first. Okay. Wait. All right. Please bear with me. Okay. Can you see now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is a simple 2D animation. It's as I said before, it's less expensive than the 3D and the virtual one, but I think it does is able to explain certain medical concepts, quite clearly. Yeah. So I just play this video.
Today, we are on a quest to learn how to carry out an effective pap smear procedure. So sit back and enjoy the ride. What is pap smear? Cervix, known as cervical cancer, is the fourth most common cause of cancer-related death among women worldwide. The best way to detect cervical cancer is by having regular Papa Nicolau tests, or known as pap smear. Cervical cytology. PAP is a short version of Dr. George Papa Nicolau, the doctor who developed the screening test. A pap smear is a microscopic examination of cells taken from the uterine cervix. A pap test can detect certain viral infections, such as human papillomavirus examination. Smear test should always be done first, followed by swabs, then vaginal examination. The necessary equipment for the pap smear, which needs to be used before the examination team with supports, bright lamp as an examination light, examination gloves, and a lubricant like KY jelly, Crisco or bivalve cervical speculum, cervical brush or spatula, and liquid cytology container or glass slide and fixative. Getting the patient to prepare the patient for the patient with the following requirements and assisting nurse. Number 1, ensure the patient has cast urine. Number 2, maintain the patient's privacy. Mask or underwear. Number 3, line the patient's spine and expose the margins downwards, covering the patient with a towel or blanket. Number 4, perform an abdominal examination. Position the patient by asking her to draw things up, bring the heels together, allow the knees to fall apart. And number 5, expose the vulva. It's just a matter of how many different ways and who's going to be utilizing I hope you understand the procedure better from this video. If you have any other queries, don't hesitate to discuss with us. Never forget that doctors have the opportunity to do one day and have it in one. Bye and have a good
Okay, so that was a very simple one. It took actually only 1 week to create that whole video. Simple one, this simple one. So this and it doesn't cost much to create that 2D animation. Huh? Okay, I go back again to my. Yeah. Okay, go back to my slide. Okay. Okay, all right. Okay, so and also okay, so we have those. Look at the 2D, the VR interactive, using really interactive super technology like VR, AR, or mixed reality, which is expensive. 3D medical animation also expensive, but less expensive than the VR version. And then we have the 2D motion graphics, like the one I showed you, very simple one, which was created, I think, just on the fly. It just took us 1 week. And then we have the basic, I think never out of date, video explanation, which Electro can actually do, and as well as hand-drawn animation as well, also can be done. It's a simple one to film. You can actually film hand-drawn animations. Okay. All right. So where to start actually? How do we start when you say and we think about how animation can benefit the healthcare industry? Firstly, it gives medical concepts a very appealing appearance. Actually, when it actually breaks down very complex knowledge, and it demonstrates certain processes that really, difficult for a layman to understand. So through animation, you can actually demonstrate all these processes in a simpler way for a patient or for a student to understand. Okay, and sometimes like when you read it in the textbook, it seems like a very boring subject. But perhaps when we design it in using visuals, sound, and so on, it becomes more vivid. It becomes more clearer to the viewer. So it's very more eye-catching. Okay. Secondly, it stimulates medical interest. Okay, because when viewers, when they watch the animation, okay, because it's more engaging with this, because animations have sounds as visuals. Okay, so they can actually have here, for example, if you have visuals of what's happening in the heart, so you can hear the sound of the heart, the pounding beat of the heart, and then you can actually and you can actually see, for example, you can use when you see the heart, the blood streaming through the valves of the heart, you can actually have sounds, and you can see the color and so on. So it creates a more interesting content for students, or even for for the public, if you have it in terms of animation, using animation for public information. All right. So and animation also works as, because you can actually break down complicated data and theories. Okay, because you like, for example, you have, like, example, Prof. Shahid shows that the infographic. Infographic is already very, very interesting. It actually breaks down the complex information to simpler information for a layman or a new medical student to understand. But when you have it, when you further extend it to animation, it becomes even more more engaging, because you can really see the process step by step. All right. Right. Okay. And then it will actually bridge the health literacy gap. Okay. For example, you know that most people will think in 3 modes of thinking. It's either visual, visual and through listening or hearing and feeling. And animation will actually combine all these 3 senses. And therefore, those who have very low medical literacy recall, by having animation, they can actually bridge their literacy about medical information to higher literacy level, okay, because they understand it more. Okay. Then finally, it ensures accuracy. Okay, so sometimes when we just have a lecture in class, they cannot just, the students have to imagine the procedure, the whole medical process. So by having animations or in the forms of, or videos, they can actually not just imagine, but they actually see, the information actually visualize the steps and so on. So it helps the students or the public to understand the process much easier. So for example, for a patient, if the doctors just explain the whole medical process, sometimes, I'm also a patient, for example, I will not be able to really grasp what is the process about. But through animation, you can actually show the whole process, and then the patient can really, understand, oh, this is what I'm going to go through, when I go through this procedure. Okay. And then as well, that through animation, you can actually simplify a lot of medical jargons. Okay, because it's very, in animation, we try as much as we can to make it, when we develop animation, it has to be very simple and simplified. And it has to be very compact and on the point. Okay, so therefore, viewers who have no medical background, they will be able to be engaged. Okay, because if we keep it very simple for the viewers. Okay, all right. And it also saves time for medics, because you know that doctors and nurses are have very hectic schedules. Okay, and when you also add, when you need the doctors themselves to explain the procedure, step by step to the patients, you're actually adding on to the list of tasks that they need to do. So perhaps when you have animations, videos and so on, it actually saves time for the medical practitioners to explain to the patients about the whole process, the whole medical procedure. And therefore, again, with accurate visualization, animation is a very good media of communication, more than just written words, more than just language, to help the patient understand better about what's going to happen to them. But it's very, very frightening for patients. For example, my friend this morning just called me this morning. It's very sad that she found out that she has cancer. sarcoma cancer. And she has to go through several medical procedures, and she's very scared. She's so scared, you know. So sometimes by having the doctors can explain, but having also these animations perhaps can also help the patient to understand better, you know, and you know about the different procedures that they have to go through. Yeah. She's mainly most of the time very, very frightening, very scary for patients. Okay, so basically we see that medical animations can be used by different people. Can be used by the surgeons, doctor surgeons, medical students, even college professors like all of you, even companies, you know, drugstores. So medical animations can be used across different industries within the medical field. Okay, but of course, different people who are using the the animations, they have different approaches when they use the medical animation. You know, how you use it with students, of course, have to be different on how the drug companies or the pharmaceutical companies, how they use it will be different from how doctors and surgeons who actually practice will be using these animations. Okay, and so how I think it can be used within your, you know, your TBL training and so on. It's going to be different according to the purposes of using these animations. Huh? All right. Okay, so we see here how it's going to be applied. For example, in professional training, like for pre-service and in-service, you know, it can be used as a medical simulation. Okay. For example, in medical simulation, it's a virtual representation that will give practitioners an experiential learning of the actual procedure. Okay, it can use as electronic learning. Okay, for example, it can demonstrate how a new drug can actually be used to act upon certain diseases. Okay, and how you can actually show how effective the drug will be to overcome some diseases. It can be done through e-learning, electronic learning. Cellular and molecular animation, you know, we actually illustrate all the macroscopic and submicroscopic processes that takes place at the cellular and molecular levels, which we cannot see through our naked eye. So the animations, we can do that. Huh? Surgical training and planning. Okay, when we need to explain complicated surgical procedures, the mechanisms of action of pharmaceutical products, so you can actually show the whole process, the whole complicated process. Okay, so these are different ways on how, okay, how it can be used, animations can be used, from medical simulation up to training, physician training, emergency care instruction, okay. Forensic reconstruction means, like, for example, sometimes, you know, when you want to do virtual autopsy of the dead, sometimes we can use it as in animation format because it's too damaging to be reconstructed in real life. So we do it in animation format. That's what it means here. Okay. All right. So these are different ways how animation can be used. Huh? So before I end, I would just like to show for examples, some examples here. I have to stop sharing here. So I go to another one. I'll share again my screen for different types of animation. Right. Okay, for this one, for example, it shows
colonoscopy. Colonoscopy inside your problems such as ulcers, inflammation, bleeding, polyps, and tumors. A colonoscopy colonoscopy. Light and video camera on the end. The anus into the rectum up through the colon, all the way to the seat. Colonoscopy. Small colonoscopy can take the video camera, which sends real-time images to a computer screen so that your doctor can assess the colon. samples called biopsy of suspicious tissue to look for signs of cancer. Colonoscopy usually takes 30 to 60 minutes. Performed in a hospital or clinic by a trained doctor known as a gastroenterologist. You will be offered a sedative to help you relax during the colonoscopy. Based on your side of the procedure, your doctor will carefully insert the colonoscope into your rectum, advance it to the end of your colon, to your cecum. The colonoscope bends, so your doctor can move it around the curves of the colon. Your doctor might gently press on your abdomen during the procedure, or ask you to change positions occasionally to help move the scope through the colon. During the entire procedure, a magnifying high-definition video of the colonoscope plays on a monitor in real time, so your doctor can thoroughly examine the lining of your colon. Video may be recorded, and photos are taken as well. A small amount of air may be blown into your colon to help access the passageway so that your doctor can see better. May you feel pressure or mild cramping, but can ease by taking slow breaths. Colonoscope is then slowly pulled out while your doctor carefully examines the inside of your bowel. If your doctor finds polyps or suspicious areas during the colonoscopy, the polyps will be removed and small tissue samples will be taken to be checked for signs of cancer. Polyps are usually not cancerous, but they can change into cancer, and that is why they need to be removed. Polyps are removed with biopsy tools or wire loops that can pass through the scope into the colon. The most common removal technique is called snare polypectomy, where the polyp is surrounded by a wire loop, and then an electric current in the wire burns off the polyp. The polyp is then pulled through the instrument channel, selected for biopsy. Other methods are available depending on the size and shape of the polyp. Polyps contain no nerves, so you won't feel pain during their removal. After your colonoscopy, you will be taken to rest in a recovery room until the effects of your sedation wear off. You may feel some gas or cramping, but this will work well. Okay, all right. So basically, you see that these animations, especially these videos, are really widely believed to facilitate procedural learning through dynamic and realistic presentation of learning content. So I think when the patient sees the actual video on how colonoscopy is done, actually it really helps them to understand what they're what's going to happen to them. And when you have this animation, it actually lowers the cognitive effort by students. It actually reduces their cognitive effort, because we actually create a mental pictorial representation of content through a guided animated narration instead of just static illustrations. So the interest effect will actually increase because you're actually describing authentic, the authentic animations will actually describe for students what's happening and will increase their motivation and cognitive engagement. Okay, so I think overall animations has a lot of, can be very, very useful for medical education, and it can be applied in many ways, not just for educating students, but also it can also be used for patients, use and doctors as well. All right. Okay. So I pass it to Prof. Ainul back again.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Tengku. It's very, very engaging, very great, very good presentation. I was very interested. The main thing about this animation is stimulating interest, which is really what we want our students to engage in with making things a bit more, not easier, but a bit more simplified. I mean, being a surgeon myself, we had to rely on our 3D imagination sometimes when we think about the procedures and all that. And even when we look at videos, YouTube videos on surgeries and all that, it's basically what focus on the field of surgery. With the help of animation, we can have a more holistic approach to it. You can see where the other structures in relation to where you're going.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I can see where one of the major stumbling block in these more complex animations is the cost, obviously.
Yes.
So it's something that as educators and the animators will have to work things through. There's a lot of questions. There are questions for you, but obviously we're trying to rush things a bit to get the speakers on. So we'll keep it towards the end, and we'll open it. We'll open all the chat and conversations and questions for you as well, Dr. Tengku. So our next speaker is our very own Prof. Ismail Saibun. His topic is VR for clinical teaching. Please get real, so he says. So he says to keep his introduction very brief. Obviously, he's a graduate of University of Malaya, our enemy, but he postgraduate-wise, he's from the Doctor of Surgery, Orthopedics and Trauma from UKM, and he subspecialized in emergency medicine here. He's also a simulation preceptor in WISER from University of Pittsburgh. His accolades is long and distinguished. He's got a certificate in healthcare simulation education from the United States. He's also the training center coordinator at the International Training Center here in UKM, training center faculty for AHA and ACLS. He initiated and developed postgraduate training in emergency medicine for doctors and paramedics in Malaysia. His key research areas are emergency medicine, pre-hospital care, and healthcare simulation. Has written 3 books, 3 chapters in a book, 58, more than 50 peer-reviewed journals. He was formerly the head of the emergency department and the chairman of the National Joint Committee. He was also our former deputy director and deputy dean in our faculty. At leisure, he loves to innovate, cycle, swim, and travel. And he was just recently appointed as the chairperson for the education subcommittee for emergency medicine. So without further ado, Prof. Ismail, please take away.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Aino, for the very well introduction. Kind introduction. Okay, well, I will try to do justice to this topic for the next 20 minutes or so. But first of all, I have to tell this that I was asked to give this talk by my colleague, Prof. Fazila and Prof. Zaliha and Prof. Harlina. Okay, I'm sharing with you my screen. Can you see me now? Hello?
Can see. Yep, we can see it.
All right. Okay. I'm good to go. Okay. Okay. So this topic is on virtual reality in clinical teaching. Okay. So this virtual, I want to. Okay. Some disclosure and disclaimer. All photos used here is just for illustration purposes only. I do not promote any of this product or against any of this product. I have no one product that I'm inclined to. And most importantly is I'm not a VR expert, okay? I was just involved in the VR research project on basically on medical VR. So I'm just going to share a little bit of my little knowledge on VR with you, which I hope it will excite you in VR. So VR or virtual reality is the buzzword actually when you're talking about futuristic technology. Mainly people, when we talk about VR, people use it in the gaming industry. And it's basically has found its way in other industries as well, such as education, aviation, security, even soccer games, and so on. Okay, I'm looking this topic from a skeptic point of view. So there will be a lot of questions I'm going to ask, and basically, hopefully, I will try to answer some of these questions. So is VR a video game? And as like people say, is it expensive? I know that some people like to play with game and used to, so happy to play with VR, but there are also some people who have a lot of problem with VR, especially with the visions, having headache, feeling nausea, and so on. So what is actually this VR thing? I think the second speakers and the third speakers has spoken also about VR. Is it really useful in clinical teaching? Because clinical teaching, as everybody has mentioned, it's a real thing. It's not virtual, and the patient is real, the environment is real, the situation is real, the emotion is real. But now we want to make it virtual. Can we get it right? Now, in fact, there's another term into all of these things. Some people call it AR, MR, even XR. So what's the difference between all of this? Okay. Now, I'm a simulationist, and in simulation, we have multiple modalities in simulations, and one of them is virtual reality, right? And virtual reality it's just a computer-generated 3D dimensional simulation that appears as an image or environment in which we or the user can view and also interact with the content. I think that's the simplest definition about VR. And it provides a complete immersive experience that basically shuts out the user from the real world, right? It stimulates the senses of the users by stimulating the sense of visual and touch, right? And they use this, how they do this is basically through this few of these VR devices. One is something that you see, so they use it on the head. They call it the head-mounted device, or HMD. And the other one is actually you also can use some of these VR glasses. Now there's a lot of technology going into VR glasses, which is basically much lighter, less bulkier, and basically it helps people to engage into VR. And that is basically something that stimulates your vision, and you need to have a controller or something like a wand, all right? Or if you don't want to use a wand, you can use something called the haptic glove. Something that when you touch, it gives you that feedback, that sense of touching and so on. And with this thing, with this HMD and this controller or this glove, it can transport you into a number of real world imagined environment, meaning that's not real. Such as you can be in the middle of emergency resuscitation room, or in the middle of a disaster hit area, or anywhere that the program is basically programming to, all right? And these are some of those things. For those of you who are not well versed with VR, you have this couple of head-mounted devices. Many companies actually producing head-mounted device, or some of these VR glasses, right? Even companies like dealing with phones also produce some of these VR glasses. The advantage of the VR glasses sometimes is actually there are a couple of you can interact together in the same VR environment. Compared to the head-mounted devices, usually you play one-on-one. And for you to touch the thing, or you can to interact with this thing, you need to have this wand or these controllers, right? Or you can use more sophisticated thing called the haptic glove. Okay, it comes in various design and features. Some is very bulky, some is very sleek and smooth. All right. So this is basically those two things. So it's touch, is visions, is touch, and also hearing. So in fact, recently, even Facebook researchers developed this new thing of this they say the most compact VR glasses. They call it the holographic VR. It's very thin. It's only about 9 millimeters. It comes very close to the eye, and you can see as though you are in that world. And but it is still in the research stage. So you, with this head-mounted device plus the wand or plus the controller, you can interact with each other, and voila, you are in the world of VR. Right? That's the most simplest way to put it. Or you can use something like the wand. Okay. I'm sure you all have seen the movie. Okay, now I think it's not fair for me to talk about VR without just mentioning a little bit of AR. I know that a lot of you know about AR, but for those who doesn't really know about the difference between AR and VR, AR, the augmented reality, is a technology that basically adds a digital elements into the surrounding real world. All right, so it utilizes devices like handphone, tablets, iPad, camera, or anything. So basically, you have a real environment, but that device, that AR device, can put the unreal thing there as though you're looking. So basically, when you use an AR, it cannot stand alone. It has to be used with one of these devices. So like if you play a Pokemon Go game, so there's a real street down in front there, but if you look through your gadget, you will see something there. So that's AR. So it's augment the reality. Now, this is a new term or new thing, new technology called the MR. It's a mixed reality. I think Dr. Tengku Nursi also mentioned just now about mixed reality. It's quite new, this technology. It combines the element of AR, VR, the real world, and the digital objects which interact with each other. And It's quite new, one of these things is actually like Microsoft HoloLens. Okay, this is the picture of Microsoft HoloLens, right? But in the medical world, I think if those of you have played with simulations with like an ultrasound, those who have played with ultrasound, the biomedic ultrasounds, that is something like a mixed reality. You are basically holding an ultrasound probe that looks like a real thing, and you are watching the monitor as though like you're looking on the real monitor of an ultrasound. There is a mannequin in front there, but when you put the probe, you can see a thing. But the thing that you see there, that's not real. That's the virtual. So it's interaction between real and virtual. Okay. Another, which is an umbrella term that covers all these technologies together. All right. So XR is basically VR plus AR plus MR and everything that's been used this thing. So that is in short. So to summarize what VR, AR, MR, XR is like, VR is you are the subject, you are real, but we go into environment which is not real, which is a virtual. So therefore, you and the environment is what you're seeing is not real. AR, the subject is not real. What you're seeing, the subject is not real, but the environment that you're seeing it is a real environment. And it's a mix of both VR and AR. All right, and XR is the term that covers the whole thing. And we use VR and AR in a lot of, as I did mention just now, is in gaming industries, aviation, navigation, home industry. IKEA use that, the picture that to show you just now, where we have the house, and then basically you can see where is the best place to put the chair. The law enforcement, you know, like even games, they use AR nowadays. If you saw a soccer match, you can see sometimes people draw on the screen that how far between the spot they're taking to the goal they're supposed to kick. So how far that thing, that's actually using AR technology, all right? And medicine. So the differences between VR, AR, against is basically VR, is it a video game? Yes, I think it is like a video game, all right? But it gives you a high sense of reality, that immersiveness, with an element of feedback and haptic thing. And especially if you use MR or you use glove. So VR, you can see they have not yet come to the stage of having the smell and touch, but maybe soon you're also going to have a VR of smell and touch. Who knows, coming soon. So how do this VR fit into clinical education? As we know, clinical teaching, the environment provides a unique opportunities to demonstrate, observe, assess the performance of skills and knowledge. In clinical teaching, the environment offers an opportunity for the applied knowledge, skills, and attitude to be in a real, authentic setting, to the authentic content with the specific problems, right? So it's real thing. So it allows the opportunity to develop clinical reasoning, decision making, and offer explicit approach to the uncertainty of a clinical decision making. So that's real thing about clinical teaching. So now, how we use all that? Okay, how do we put VR into the perspective of clinical teaching that incorporates knowledge, skills, and attitude? Okay. So this is just a schematic drawing of this thing. So because when we learn clinical education, you put all that thing, and the environment, you can learn it in the ward, the clinic, the emergency room, the pre-hospital, OT, or even the walkway. This is where you learn about clinical medicine. And now you are trying to bring all that in front of you, but not in that space. It's a challenging thing, but clinical education also faced with problems of some challenges. There are limitations in few things. One is actually in terms of suitable placement. There are inadequate placement nowadays, right? In fact, with COVID-19 pandemic, this is actually even more real problem. Students cannot go to the real place. Issue of patient safety. So because you cannot use the patient as a guinea pig for you to train on the patients. And there is also problem of opportunistic learning, because student will learn the real case if the case presented themselves to the hospital or to the emergency room. So if you don't get to see that chance, you don't really learn actually with that cases. So with VR, most of this problem is actually being tackled, okay? And it allows the learner to experience various degrees of immersiveness in terms of vision, sound, and touch. It provides an environment so closely represent of actual clinical situations. In many variations, you can change the environment according to the cases, the difficulty of cases that you are preparing for the students, and it allows deliberate practice. The students can keep on practicing onto these things until they're really good. I mean, they're really good at it, right? So we recently did a study looking into how do healthcare professionals feel about VR, and we did a mixed mode study combining quantitative and qualitative study. We're looking into training, the usage of VR, VR development and resources, obstacles, and in terms of finances. So what do we found? We sent more than 300 over thing, but we only get what 99 respondents for these things. That's actually the usual case with online survey. In terms of training, now all the respondents are certain that VR will ensure safety for the trainee and the training in the healthcare education. 60% believe that VR application can reduce the cost of teaching. Now, it is expensive, but most of the this is the perception thing. Most of the healthcare educators feel that if you have more of this thing, you can get your hand into this thing, sooner or later it's going to get cheaper, and it's going to get much cheaper compared to real patients. 70.1% are convinced that VR application in healthcare education should be tailored to the local needs. In terms of usage, 99% expressed that their interest in using VR for their healthcare practice. 80% feel that VR have good potential to be used in Malaysian healthcare. 85% are interested to know or how to use VR in practice, but unfortunately only 55% have not been exposed to VR, right? So more than half have not been exposed to VR. They know about it, they heard about it, they have seen it somewhere, maybe they have tried it with gaming thing, but not in a medical VR. In terms of patient safety, 95% believe that VR will improve patient engagement, 99% patient safety. Everybody feels that patient health education can be enhanced because, like what Dr. Tengku was mentioning just now, patient can see what actually they're going to go through, so they will understand, and that will basically help in terms of patient compliance. So 98% feel that VR can help in terms of patient compliance. 73.7% feel that VR can reduce the risk of complication of surgery because they have chance to practice this thing before the surgeons have the chance to practice before they are into the real surgery, and 80% feel that's a bit better patient outcome. All right, 99% thinks that more VR tool and applications should be created for the healthcare, and all of them feel that VR will change our healthcare landscape. Okay, in terms of financial, these are actually things that I think we have to look into. We want to develop VR into healthcare. 60% or 1/2 of them are not aware of any VR developer. So they say they know about VR, but who developed this thing? How to help them to develop this kind of thing? So developers and SME subject matter experts should come together and try to develop more and more VR applications or VR content. 78% felt that the VR development was expensive. 29.6% feel that their institution would invest in VR. So less than half thinks that their institution would invest in VR. All right, and a lot of them giving a figure between 20 to 50 to 500,000, but actually it is more than that. Okay. So how do we teach VR to all? How do we teach people to use VR in clinical education? Now, I think the first thing that we should not treat VR as a toy. The moment we treat VR as a toy, we lost it. So basically, if you want to use VR, the same thing, you have to develop a learning outcome and a clear learning objective for every application or every content that you have. And you have to ensure that the VR program have the flexibility and the content meet the LOs. Because the problem is that sometimes when we buy an off-shelf a VR program or VR content, it don't have that flexibility. And if you want to increase that flexibility, you have to pay the developers more. So these are the things that we need to find someone who can develop a program which is very flexible, that basically suits to your needs. It allows, then we have to allow learners the flexibility to learn and explore. But at the end of the session, a feedback and debriefing is mandatory. You don't just leave them there hanging without, even though they're playing with VR. Debriefing is need to be done, and there should be some sense of assessment. This is some of the VR thing, example with the learning anatomy. They can see the thing. Okay, this is something like, this is like the Vimedix ultrasound simulator that I mentioned to you. They use a mannequin, they use an ultrasound probe, but they are seeing something like this. Okay. Okay, this is actually an example of VR for practicing intubations. The learners will wear these haptic gloves and they will feel some sort of resistance when they try to intubate this patient. Oh, sorry. Okay, so what you see sometimes is just like this, as though that they're just moving their hands, like freely in the air, but they are actually really trying to touch or interact with these patients. This is also some sort of called an MR. They use a probe, a real probe, and basically trying to do some procedures to this patient. So just a little bit, Doctor, I know just maybe about 3 more minutes on developing MVR content, medical VR content. These are some of the steps that we do. The first thing, actually, if you want to develop the MVR content, you start with a topic. You have to determine whether this is a procedural based or process based, which is different thing in terms of how you want to set it up. You create a storyline, you develop a storyboard, and then after that, you set the direction of the module. How much of interactiveness of the module needs to be done. Right? Then basically you gather all the props or the tools, and props and tools are something like, for us in medical line, examples like our x-rays, our CT scans, photos, MRIs, and so on. And then with this thing, we basically work with the developer for them to render the VR content, and what we call as modeling. And then after that, they will do the programming on the VR content, and then basically set up for human and VR interactions. This is all what they do, and then basically they cost us back to test those things, doing an alpha testing, and give them feedback on how to improve in terms, again, with the interactions. And then before we go on to the beta testing. So roughly, this is basically the schematic drawing of how it is being done. You have the storyboard, the modeling, the programming, you do the testing, and if it's okay, not okay, you redesign again, and then keep on doing it until you perfect those things. And basically, finally, you have to have the maintenance. Okay, these are some of the papers that basically looking into VR as a potential educational tool. They say that it provides engaging and intuitive environments. Okay, and in terms of teaching using VR, there's also some VR in terms of clinical teaching. This is for basically surgery. A lot of surgery actually utilizes VR or even MR for teaching, right? So that's why I know it's actually very suitable for you all. Or even emergency and a little bit of nursing. VR is being used for, this is for the navies, they use for pre-hospital, also use VR to basically create a combat situation, and they get the people to go in and do those things. Even with dentistry, also use a lot of VR, okay? And also for resuscitation, VR also being used for NRP, neonatal resuscitation program course, okay? This is another paper showing that VR using VR against conventional training, and they show that actually it's as good as a conventional training, right? Lastly, is about this. This is where the London Hospital, the Imperial College, they use VR to do walk-arounds for medical students. So the medical students is basically having their VR lens, and the consultants are doing rounds, and basically this is what they say. This is like an image actually being pulled. So this is what they're doing now. Again, this is even in the research stage, but it is coming. All right. So VR is wonderful, but it has its side effect. Some people cannot stand it because of severe dizziness, nausea, some problem of imbalance after they remove the thing. They can also damage the eyesight. All right. So this is something I think we have to use, but with cautions. I think with that, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Ismail. That was a very nice presentation on VR. There's a lot of things that we need to learn from VR. I think our own Professor Yazid is a big proponent of VR training in orthopedics. I think he's won lots and lots of gold medal awards and things like that for his VR training and whatnot. But I can see where not limitations, but where there is some apprehension about VR with the cost and with certain limitations to it, as well as the side effects. I played around with the VR text in MMU a few months back, and coming out from that, I do have this, the nauseous and the dizziness effect from using these VR technologies. But you can see where it's coming from, and you can see where the application, the use of its application in this current context. Okay, so we've come to the end of all our presentations, and there's quite a big number, quite a few questions, and some are very general, some are quite specific. So if all the panelists would be kind enough to unmute, and we will start going through the questions, from the audience. So we'll start off. Before that, any of the panelists wants to give a short summary or a short consolidation before we go on to the Q&A, or should we just go straight to the Q&A?
I only want to say how astonished I am by the quality of what people are doing. I've just learned so much. It's remarkable, but very keen to be involved in any questions that people ask.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll start off with the first question here. Actually, a PhD student all the way from London. I am Noor Abdul Rahman, currently doing PhD at Research Department of Primary Care and Population Health at UCL UK. Okay, I remember one of the earliest discussions that medical educators had about shifting the clinical teaching online is the constraints of MMC accreditation of a minimum of 120 weeks of clinical teaching. So the question is, has this requirement changed since the pandemic? How can clinical educators contribute in terms of recommending optimal exposure in terms of time, core content, or experience for clinical exposure against the backdrop of COVID-19? And how have you seen the GP clerkship change since the pandemic? I think this is mainly for Prof. Steve regarding the teaching and the hours. I mean, there were a lot of discussions about credit hours, notional hours in face-to-face and clinical teaching, even with our own MMC and our own MQA here. So what do you think about these questions? I mean, Prof. Steve, if you could please have a look at this.
That was one of actually the first things that happened here in Australia, was our Australian Medical Council saying, forget about hours. It's no longer about time spent, it's what you do. So that's why the exercise was undertaken to map the minimum competencies, and whether you achieve those in 80 hours or 140 hours, it's actually been a big step forward for us in recognising that hours are actually reasonably meaningless when it comes to medical training. It's much more important to map competencies.
Okay. And how about the clinical educators contributing to recommending optimal exposure? So that is what you meant by the core content and experience, isn't it, Prof? Yeah. And how have you seen the GP clerkship? Has it changed a lot since the pandemic? The clerkship program, whether how have they engaged with the students now, the GPs, the community GPs, practitioners in Australia?
Well, I think Australia's a little different. I mean, our GPs are generally private business people, so they became very nervous early on at the risk to their business of having it shut down by a COVID-infected student. I actually had a supervision meeting with one of our master's students this morning who's looking at direct observation of general practitioner trainees and finding that the number of trainees who are no longer being directly observed within general practice is quite concerning, with physical distancing and with online consultations and these sorts of things. We haven't quite caught up on some of the online, or the review of online recorded consultations as a way of supervision. But at the moment, as of today, most of our students are in general practice rather than hospital placements, because they're seen as being less in the way with the hospitals ramping up again. So in fact, we're getting many more longitudinal placements. Our psychiatrists are not happy with the students learning mental health in general practice, but that's the reality. Women's health, children's health, general practice is becoming our major training ground. Sorry, I'm all right, by the way.
Don't worry, we're virtually online, so I'm not that worried. So you won't travel on the internet, I hope.
Difficult to call an ambulance from 5,000 kilometers away.
Yeah. I mean, one of the main worries with the GPs is the physical constraint for the space as well, isn't it? I mean, we wanted to start with our first year students having a bit of GP exposures where they just observe the interactions between the GPs and the patients. And obviously, when the COVID came, that cohort had to stay at home, and we couldn't establish the online connection with the GPs then, like as your services are. Ours are very, very private as well. So that we had to use some of our lecturers in the hospitals now doing the online teaching. That had to be sacrificed. But obviously now, with things are easing up, we'll see whether the GPs are a bit more interested in taking part in that. Okay, so next question is, I think Isham was asking, I think you've answered this, how the students reacted towards the new norm. And you were saying that, yeah, students feel shortchanged, but their course is changing. They were asking about the new norm of teaching, especially students who've already enrolled in the faculty prior to the pandemic and how they adapt to it. I think you answered it online, and some students felt a bit shortchanged with it as well. Did you want to add on to any further to that question, or you fairly answered it online? Okay.
Prof, I'd just like to mention, I think students feel that even for instance in MMU, when everything's online, they miss the human contact, the interaction with their peers. They don't feel that it's the same online. Especially for those who are undergraduate students. They really want they need the human contact, face to face.
Yeah.
It's not the same online.
Yep. True. Very true. Okay.
We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you, Prof.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Prof. I know.
Okay, sorry. I'll unmute now. Can you hear me? Sorry. Okay. The next question is for Prof. Shahid. Student is interested regarding the BEST approach, as this is the most disrupted due to COVID-19. The first question was, why was the supervisor used as simulated patient and not real patient? And then the second question is, can you explain more on the hypothetical deductive method used for BEST? And the third question is, referring to the experiential cycle used for BEST, presuming that this is based on Kolb's experiential learning cycle, how do you determine the active experimentation step using this method? It's a very technical question, but I'll leave it to Prof. Shahid.
Okay, it's okay. These are the practical questions, and first of all, I appreciate the questions being asked. But when you asked me 3 questions, I forgot what was the first question actually. So let me start with the other. What was the first question?
The first question was, why was the supervisor used as simulated patient and not real patient?
Okay, see, in which model? They're talking about
for the BEST model.
BEST, okay. In BEST, all the cases are real cases. They are not simulated. They are real cases. I showed you even the picture of the patient, but then you have to have the permission. So at the time when there was documentation was done, we had a permission from the patient that if we want to use for academic reasons, your picture, videos naturally is if from a clinic and all from OT theater, they are just covered. so no point, but you have to cover their eyes and you have to have a permission from them. So those were the, so wherever I have a lot of cases in my archive, but where I didn't get the consent from them, I can't use those. But these are all real patients, none of the paper patient like we create in PBL. That's the one of the requirement of the BEST. You must have real patients, because if you do not have real patients, the sense of teaching coming from the supervisor will be not that authentic. Authentic mean in reality, what has happened actually to this case. For example, there was one interesting case that I have discussed with the students, and that there I had to admit my fault that a patient was, a case was a lipoma in the neck. And as he came to my clinic and she said, actually she has a swelling and she want cosmetic reasons, want to get it removed. As in a busy clinic, I just put down that it moves deglutition. So I thought it is thyroid and gave her appointment. On the day of, I'll share sometime, in the interesting case, when I opened it, and thyroid was absolutely normal. And actually, it was a lipoma, which was lifted up together with the flap up. So I was wondering, so this kind of cases, if you go, but these need little more complex cases, which I use for postgraduate level. So these are real cases where a clinician can actually share what they have, what first-hand experience with this patient was. So these are the real stories that the undergraduate student will be listening to. But then you have your constraint, how much will you teach them in terms of management? MQA guides us, the management should be the outline of management for the undergraduate. So we can't take them too into depth of the management, so outline part, but wherever it makes interesting for the students, say small video clips, small procedures, so they will make sense of the lesions actually. So these are real cases. So coming to your question number 2, which is, question number 2 is regarding, you know, when you ask too many questions together, then I have to take it down next time. Okay. What was the question number 2? And hello, am I connected?
Yeah, no, it's me. The question number 2 is, can you explain more on the hypothetico-deductive method used?
Very right. Okay. The principle, this reminds me third question also. The principles involved here is hypothetico-deductive and think aloud. These are two approaches, and it has been time proven and research proven. When students learn in clinical setting, they must generate the hypothesis like in PBL. You know, PBL, there's a step 3 where the students are supposed to, after the clinical problem, they have to generate the hypothesis, which is differential diagnosis. So here they will create, and then as the information comes to them, right? Like in PBL, it comes through triggers. In this BST, it will come through the supervisor. He will not, he is the data holder of that patient, all information, but the answer would not come unless question is asked on that, right? So yes, supervisor will keep probing them with open-ended question and bringing them what they are missing out, what important information they are missing out. So once the question is asked, the information will be released. And once it is released, then they will go back, look into their differential, and will retain some of those which can be carried forward with information further coming in, and those which are not relevant will be removed. So this is called hypothetico-deductive, mean analytic reasoning, applying your logic, your analytic reasoning. So what are irrelevant has been put, and there was no positive information on that, so those are removed. Coming to the experiential cycle actually is part and parcel of all the models that we do in clinical education, be it case-based learning, TBL, or be it PBL. So experiential cycle, you have to remember the steps. Step number 1 is the contacts. Patient learn from the book. All the knowledge information goes to the short-term memory. There it lasts for 7 to 10 days. You like it or not, after 10 days, it wipes off from your memory. So there has to be an interface which will bring this short-term memory retention to the long-term memory. This interface is provided by the experiential cycle of the call. And this says, number 1, there must be a context. And authentic context make it more real. So context, usually are a patient. In this scenario, in COVID scenario, these are not the real patient, but these are the real cases actually, right? So the contacts can be from the folder of your real patient or can be a real patient in on campus. Second is the prior knowledge, the brainstorming. So then, for example, we leave the students in clerkship. We say, my students say, Prof, we have a bedside teaching. I say, okay, you or your group can clerk a patient and call me in that time when they are clerking, we are not interfering. It's their prior knowledge. So whatever prior knowledge they have, they will brainstorm with that and they will clerk the patient. Third step is their experience. So when they clerk a patient and they do it online, and I'm as a facilitator taking the patient role, giving them all information, so then they will actually be experiencing with that patient is step 3. Step 4 is in an experiential cycle is reflection, their presentation. And here in online session, we have experience and reflection go hand in hand. But in actual BST, reflection is when they present. And then feedback is provided not only by the supervisor, also by the peer. So those feedback open up for their further avenues for the learning, which is we call new learning or gaps in knowledge they will identify based on the feedback, and then they will learn more. And this is how the lifelong learning goes on. So this is experiential cycle. And it is applied not in TBL, but or a BST, but all the clinical model actually it applies.
Okay, thank you. All right, I hope that explains, that helps with the question. Now, the next question is regarding the integrated OSCE.
Yeah.
Does it involve students to verbally answer the questions? And also, what platform do you use for the integrated OSCE?
We can do that. And thank you for this question. We can do that. That normally in even on campus or face-to-face OSCE also, if you remember, often we have a checklist, which I always I'm against it. At the end, all the checklists say supervisor will ask you 2 questions, right? It is instruction for the supervisor, and then supervisor asks questions. Sometimes those questions are not relevant to the exhibit, right, or patient. Then it becomes knowledge-based. And since I love psychometrics of the assessment and evaluation of assessment, I always find those OSCEs where the questions are asked, and if they are not really very relevant to the exhibit of the patient, then it becomes a knowledge base. It becomes an OBA. It becomes a multiple true false or whatever you call it, right? Or short answer essay or SAQ. It is no more a test of the clinical skills. So I personally recommend that we should avoid that, right? Here also, we have opted that principle that students will not be asked questions. He is provided with an SP and he will explain things to the SP, right? And the SP concerned. Then SP is also trained when the students is explaining to them. So please come up with your problem. So suddenly this SP is trained, right? So he will pose a question or put a question, and we see how the student respond to that. Okay. So it is all coming. So here in Blessing in Disguise says that in COVID, this online, this integrated OSCE, we create more room for the communication skills. So communication skill goes from interviewing at the first station, then explaining the examination picture and all shown to the, which he will download from the file attached. So then he will go through those and then explain it to the patient, right? Then similarly, he will go the investigation, explain it to the patient, and patient is trained to intervene and ask few questions to the. So it is not actually a supervisor is observing how he performs in that. So
Okay.
what we do is here, if you look at the Miller's pyramid, they normally do at the demonstration level. How do you demonstrate? In COVID era, when we're doing online, actually they cannot perform. So what we do, we are doing it at know-how level, right? Know and know-how level, but demonstrate probably will be missing. So that's a compromise, but still we can move on.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else want to add on to that? Anyone? Okay, so the next, any of the other speakers want to add on? Okay, the next question is regarding the VMC, the virtual medical consultation. what are the resources needed in terms of building this software for the VMC?
The first thing is they have prepared, my e-learning team has prepared a template. That this template actually is your actual case. The all information they want, you have to provide them with all the videos, pictures, and everything. And then e-learning team, they have an e-learning team who actually will work on this, and it takes almost 7 days to 10 days actually to make it. So the resources from e-learning team is their technology, how would they do, and they like when we provide them with videos and actual CT scans, actual investigative reports. So those investigation reports, actually, they love it, and then they will put, some indicators on lesions, and then ask, and then they create some answer to it, and you have to do it just to match it. So it's technology which is from the e-learning. We get this stuff done, and then it is reported back to us that this is ready, and we review it. But we have to provide them with the entire. So our part is, as a clinician from our archive, if incomplete information, then it makes this case very superficial, and they don't like it. So they want more complex, so more complexity will make for them too. So they actually are trained. I haven't done it on my own. I will provide them with, on their template, the entire document about the patient, and then of course keeping with the patient confidentiality and everything. We provide them, and then they will develop sessions for us, for students.
Okay.
Resources is mostly the e-learning team, actually comes from them.
Interesting to ask you, the e-learning team, who comprises of the e-learning team? Are they medical lecturers, or are they people?
No, they work with the. No, they are corporate. They are corporate. They are highly technical from their own side, but they will work together with the person providing those things. They will come time and again, many times, clear things up, and then you have to. They are not experts. They are not content. You have to be content expert all this while when they are developing.
Okay. But these are software experts, basically.
Yeah,
these are those.
Yeah, they are software. That's right. Yeah.
So you're engaging those with computer programming and things like that.
That's right.
In your e-learning team.
Design and all.
All right. Okay. So next question. I'll try and move this along as fast as I could. Has the medical educators in Malaysia considered sharing the resources, particularly to help University of low resource setting? That's one of the questions. Follow up from that. I think that's for Prof. Shahid as well.
Okay. You want me to answer this? Actually, I think Malaysia is doing very well in this in this area.
Okay.
A lot of collaborative work is going on. We have medical education forums. We have discussion day and night. We are teaching each other. We are learning from each other. And then webinars are going on, and a lot of burning issues that has been bothering, for example, assessment, open book exam, and all has been brought into discussions, and valuable information is coming. And then we get a lot of questions from the low resources institutions where they are asking how to perform a certain thing with this limited resources. And we actually are helping each other. We are learning from each other. And in Malaysia, probably the medical institutions are doing well in this sense that the collaborative learning from each other is quite, and we felt the need during this COVID that we must share our whatever knowledge and skills that we have with others. And that's why I always say during this challenge test period, the faculty is not just relevant to teaching and assessment. They have another role, which in my first slide, I said they have another role, which is publishing. Publishing means you have to have research, you have to have innovation. And now journals are open, right? You don't have to go to your ethic and research committee for approval. Journals have now offering you the conceptual models, the concept education. You can create one and they will publish it. It has to go through the peer review. So you involve principles, pedagogy, technology and all, and then you make manuscripts, which doesn't need, for example, in IMU, we are not supposed to take approval from the JC or from the ethic committee if it is about the concept. So conceptual mind, for example, my BEST is in, actually should have been, I wanted to share it. I asked the editor, it was accepted and was supposed to be released on 30th June. But they say because of the COVID, the staff is slightly, you know, more involved in work, so it's delayed. But it was promptly accepted. 3 reviewers give very stringent kind of review, critical review, which I have to answer. And then it will be published, and then I'll share from this forum through UKM organizers. So I think in a day or 2 it should publish. So it is on BEST. The other is in publication also, is about is in being in process, is about the IOS Kia. So do publish also, right? Do publish so people get details what we are doing. Don't keep it to yourself. Do publish. So do research, do innovation, and publish, and see how it works in your setup and how other can use it for their setup. I hope I answer.
Yep, thank you. Okay, moving on. The next question is for most likely Dr. Tengku. What are the basic information required from the medical educator to give you to create a perfect animation?
All right. When we look at the whole process of creating animation, actually consists of 3 stages. Huh? Okay, can I show you? Can I share the screen on the screen?
Yes,
What?
please.
Okay. Okay. This is the process of creating animation. It is almost similar for 3D as well, whereby we have the first part is where the ideation happens, where we need to come up with the script and the storyboard and how we're going to organize the content. Now, the lecturers here will go in. We need the lecturers' input here, because we consider the lecturers and the doctors, and they are the subject matter experts. So they will come in here to provide information and the content so that we can actually produce the script and the storyboard. And then once we have the script and storyboard, we'll create a sort of a prototype of the animation, which we call animatics. Okay, animatics is like, it's not the full animation yet, but it's like a prototype of the actual animation that will be produced. At this stage also, we will need the lecturers, the doctors to be around to verify what we have created is actually, because we are not the experts, so they are the experts of the content. So they need to verify at the animatic level whether what we have produced is accurate according to the concepts of medical concepts, medical information. Okay, so the production phase basically we will do on our side. You know, for example, when Prof. Shahid mentioned about the e-learning team, we also have an e-learning team in MMU. So, and the e-learning team consists of instruction designers, the multimedia designers, the graphic designers, the programmers. They will do all this. They will do all they'll be involved in the production stage. It's just that at every step, we will always go back to the lecturers to verify, to basically do the quality assurance will be done by the lecturers, because they are going to be the stakeholders. They'll be using the content. So we will always involve the lecturers and the doctors and so on with the in production, in sense of they will be the quality assurance. They play the role of the quality assurance because they will be using the content. Okay, so at the end, so as you see, every part we have the client review. At every stage there is the client review, and the client review you refer to the subject matter experts. They know better the content. We only develop based on what the content is given to us. Okay, but the ideas, how you want it to be delivered, you know, the lecturers will know better than us, because you are the experts in this field. Okay, so so basically throughout the whole production phases, we will need the input from the lecturers, because you know the content better. You only develop. Okay, all right, and maybe to instill some creativity in how it's going to be presented. That's all. Okay, right?
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Tengku. Any comments, Prof. Ismail, regarding this, about the contents and animations and all that? Given that you're an expert in simulation, trying to get the animation and simulation putting in together. I see it as a big potential there.
I think it's about the same in terms of the steps, in terms of preparation, whether it's 2D or it's 3D with VR. It's basically that you have the pre-work to be done. Basically, that one lot to be done by us, by the SME. I call it SME, subject matter experts. And then after that, then basically the engagement part where we have to engage the technical people in terms of creating the modeling of those or they call it animation of those. And then once they've settled that, that's when coming in to basically verify whether this model, the way how it interacts with these users, is it the same thing? So it's about the same in terms of bringing in the only thing is actually we have also used lots of tools in terms of the MRI, CT scans, and things that we want them to program it into those things. But I think it's not much of a difference. But I think the more important thing, I think what we need, because when I go around, I see we don't have a lot of this medical VR or animation content. There's still lack, I mean, of this thing, and I think people need it. So if more people can come in and bringing their cases, that we can create more of this content, that will be good. Because there are more than one way how to manage a dengue. There's more than one way how to put the chest tube. There's more than one way how to do lots of things. So if we have a lot of content for this, either 2D or 3D or VR, I think that will be very good for the audience, for the users.
Right, I agree, Prof. Ismail. Because what's happening in the industry, the animation industry as well as the VR industry, the focus is too much on entertainment. Yeah. Even in animation, the focus on creating movies like, you know, as you said, Bobo Boy, Adin Ali. But there's very minimal, there are not many companies involved in, you know, medical animation. I think it's something that we can both, all of us can look into. You know, IMU, MMU, UKM, I think we can work together and perhaps, you know, work together to produce more medical animations and VR for the country, because not many are going into that. Yeah.
I totally agree with you with that. I think these people that love into this thing should come together and produce more. And once you have more, the thing is that it's easier for people to get their hand into this thing and practice. Because at the end of the day, it's not so much of the animation. The thing is actually at the end of the day how we're going to benefit the patient.
Right.
That's the reason why I go into this kind of thing.
I totally agree. I mean, this might be a bit off topic, but something that happened, which is very unfortunate. Someone became a dentist just by looking at YouTube videos for hours on hours, and then that person managed to practice as a dentist without a license. Okay, so I'm not using that as a good example, but by visual learning from the YouTube and all that, and if we can integrate virtual reality, animation, as well as real life videos, we can integrate all that to incorporate the anatomy, the functions, and all that together. There's a huge, the possibility, the potential for that is massive. I know that the cost will come into play with using all this kind of technology, but I think that's where we're heading towards, especially nowadays with our contact, the potential contact between students and real patients the windows is getting smaller because of these problems that we're having now. Yeah, it's great. I don't think there's any more questions.
Prof. Zainul, can you allow me 2-3 minutes to show something? Which was
sure, please do. Yes.
I just share the screen first. So there, the screen, and there. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. Now.
Yes,
regarding the experiential cycle, this I got from my archive, and this time I got different thing put together to explain this. Say for example, good morning, I'm coming to my clinic and I find a case which is angiofibroma, which is a very rare case, sitting outside my clinic for a visit, right? So this patient I picked up. This is my contact. So I asked the staff to give me this folder, and she gave the folder, and this patient is sitting outside, right? So I decided to so this patient now I picked up and asked her and then I pass it on to a student, a postgraduate student who's professor by now already. It is 2004 documentation I have done. Now this student, actually I asked him like a DOPS to examine this case in 10 minutes and then come and discuss with me. So now she is doing an endoscopic examination of this case, which is an angiofibroma. She is doing nicely well. Now she is a professor already. Okay, so this is based on the prior knowledge. I didn't interfere. I got engaged. I'm just observing how she does it. So she was taught how to do the endoscopic examination of the postnasal space. That was based on her prior knowledge, right? After this, the experience, this is her experience while performing. She developed experience how to do it and everything. So she look at the monitor, she picks up what is the diagnosis and all, and then what she does it, she would present it. So this, my student 2 was attached to me. So to optimize the learning, the other student I also asked to be accompanied and see the whole, this was just 10 minutes. So now the presentation, this is reflection, right? Experience got, prior knowledge brainstorming done. Now she's presenting is her reflection, right? After she presents, I'm as a supervisor taking the notes and then giving her feedback. What was done well, you start with that. Where is the room to do it better, right? And then together with this, we are working on I have to cut short this video. So we are working, what should be the new knowledge? What are the gaps of knowledge? So this is new knowledge. Now remember, if a student have learned through this process, this is going to be in her long-term memory for lifelong retention maybe, right? And from book they learn, they forget. So this way, if I give her the same case or similar case in future, maybe a week after or a year after, she will be comfortable doing it. This is called experiential cycle learning. Okay, that's how we do it.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Shahid. That was very interesting, very insightful and informative for all of us. I think we've reached all. I think we've covered all. Oh, there was one question regarding the integrated OSCE. They were asking how you contain the. Did you use the same stations for every student in integrated OSCE? If yes, how do you control the leak of questions to other students? That was the main question.
No, it is run. The exam will be delivered on the same time, say that for everyone. So once there is like an on campus, right? So they will be entering into respective room, which will be, and there no unless they have the login sanction given. Otherwise, nobody else will be able to enter that room. So they will only enter when their time comes. So it's very secure. It's very secure. It's the breakout sessions we create and we give them the link. They can log in. So it's very secure.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've actually gone way beyond our scheduled time. But so Prof. Steve had to go now. He was expecting it just for 2 hours. I said it's gone way beyond our 2 hours time, and I'm very appreciative to everyone for this very informative exercise, very informative webinar, and we appreciate all your inputs. We've got this on recording, so we'll be sharing this on our on our Facebook page for UKM CPC Medic, and I thank all the panelists for their hard work and for their efforts and all the questions from the attendees. Thank you very much, everyone.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bye-bye.